All right, good morning. My name is Greg Jackson, and I am the Advocacy Director for the Community Justice Action Fund, but also a part of this Time Is Now coalition. And thank you for tuning in for our presser on the need for action in the Senate. For me, in 2013, on April 21st, I became a part of this movement by circumstance and not by choice. I was hit with a stray bullet that damaged two arteries and frankly left me fighting for my life at the hospital 8 years ago. But this was also coincidentally 3 days after we saw the lack of action around background checks in Congress. And since the time that I was shot and in the hospital and watched members of Congress refuse to take action on basic gun safety laws, over 800,000 people have either been shot or killed by gun violence. So today we are highlighting and really spotlighting, is probably a better term, those who have been most impacted, especially those who have been impacted since that day where Congress has refused to take action, and asking and demanding that the Senate take action now with the opportunity to address gun violence in multiple ways. We know that the president has made this a priority to address gun violence across our country through his executive actions, but also in his commitment to funding violence prevention strategies. But we've yet to see the House or Senate step up and echo that same level of urgency and priority. So with that said, we're going to hear from quite a few folks today. First, you're going to hear from Fred Gutenberg, a good friend of mine and a great advocate in this cause, but also a fellow survivor that unfortunately lost a loved one as well. So I'll pass it over to Fred.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate you a lot. Appreciate all of you a lot. I go through life saying, I wish I didn't know any of you, but I love you. Shondell, you just had a big day yesterday because for you, yesterday was 3 years since your son was killed. For me, that was back on February 14, 2018, since my daughter was killed. Listen, both preventable shootings, both also inevitable because we have failed to do anything about gun violence. Preventable, but inevitable. And by the way, the next shooting and the next person will eventually be on one of these Zoom calls is also inevitable because we have failed to do anything about gun violence. Listen, I live in Parkland, Florida. I live in the community where they said gun violence doesn't happen. We don't get affected by violence, right? Until we do. It's happening in every community across America, in every neighborhood, in homes, self-inflicted or inflicted by somebody else. Gun safety is public safety. Gun safety is school safety. Gun safety is church and temple safety. It's movie safety. It's mall safety. Gun safety is police safety. If we address gun violence, we become safer, full stop. And so we are here today because the time is now. We have this unique opportunity this year to ensure that this Senate passed the legislation that the House has sent them, that President Biden wants, that we all will save someone else from being the next person that has to join on a call like this. We're not asking for much. We're asking for the bare minimum. Background checks. Know who's buying these weapons. Background checks. That's what we're asking for. And so here is my message to the Senate. The time is now. Any failure on your part to do the bare minimum, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you share in the burden and the responsibility of the next shooting. Any failure on your part to do something about gun violence only means you may miss the only opportunity that we have as a country to deal with gun violence, and that is this year. With President Biden, we have a Democratic-controlled Senate, we have a Democratic-controlled House. Next year's another election year. I am not waiting until next year. It's this year. It is time now. And if not if the Republicans won't join us. They already said they won't. We know they won't. This is bipartisan legislation supported by 90% of Americans, and the Republicans have said, count us out. Because we know that, because they've already told us that, we must go forward without them. And so this is now on two senators, Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. Join the other Democrats. Let's get this done and get it done this year. The time is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred, and thanks for sharing your story and frankly, the urgency around the need for action here in Congress. Next, we're going to hear from Luis Hernandez, the co-founder and executive director of Youth Over Guns. Luis, are you there?
I'm here. Pleasure to be on and pleasure to see you all. Thank you both, Greg and Fred, for sharing your stories. I think it's what grounds conversations like this. When we think about gun violence every day, it's those real personal stories that oftentimes legislators don't see in their face because they're so detached from reality. And so as I show up today, I'm hurting in a lot of ways. I sat back last week and watched a map be pinned up and down with locations across America that have seen mass shootings. And for a second, I felt hopeless. For a second, I felt hopeless because I know that mass shootings make up just 1% of the reality of gun violence across the country. And I know that communities like mine are hurting. When we see story after story after story be highlighted of not just mass shootings, but shootings in general, it's the pain that we feel. I shared my story a few weeks ago after coming back from the press conference at the White House. I was on the Rose Garden when I received a text from a colleague letting us know that one of our mentees were shot and killed. That's the reality that gun violence has in our communities. Brownsville, Brooklyn, just here in New York City, two beautiful young women who had been engaged in advocacy efforts just like me, had been engaged in our programs, vibrant and full of life, just not with us in the matter of seconds. And I think that's what we want legislators to sit with as they continue to sit on their hands and prolong legislation. Our community members are dying. Our family members are dying. People are dying across America. Police violence continues to run rampant, because I'd be remiss if I sit here and not talk about the fact that police officers continue to run rampant with their guns across the country, execution style, killing our loved ones left and right. I'm thinking about Ma'Khia Bryant, 16-year-old Black girl, shot and killed. We've seen mass shooters be disarmed and arrested peacefully without a single scratch. Quite frankly, we've seen them be fed in precincts and taken care of. And our loved ones are being shot and killed for simply existing. And so as we continue to push forth, there's an opportunity for Congress to pass things like the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. There's an opportunity for Congress to pass the president's executive actions and his funding bill to really invest $5 billion into community violence intervention strategies that we know are proven effective in our communities. Oftentimes when we think about gun violence, we have a very focused lens on what that looks like, and it looks different for every community. And it looks different specifically for young people who are disproportionately impacted by it. As I sat yesterday planning a town hall with some of our young leaders from the DMV area, they talked about their personal experiences and really what brought them to this space. And we had to have an honest conversation about the fact that even as we continue to invest in local community efforts, many times their communities are not seeing the resources. And that was the sentiment that was raised in the conversation. What are we doing to actively bring resources to those communities that are most impacted? I'm thinking about Baltimore, who continues to see rising rates of gun violence across their city. And young people continue to be impacted by this gun violence on an everyday level. And so, again, I want to urge Congress and the U.S. Senate to really do their job. I think you've been elected, most of you, on campaigns that promise to bring gun policy to the forefront, and to sit now in office and ignore that push, ignore the call of the people that are calling on you to pass legislation as our loved ones are dying every day, is not just failing America, but it's failing the people that you represent. On a very basic level, you should feel the urgency to do what you were elected to do. And there's an opportunity to do that. There's an opportunity to lead as a gun safety representative, there's an opportunity to invest in gun violence prevention strategies. And that's what we're calling on you all to do.
Thank you, Luis. Thanks for sharing your story and all of your activism. And we just appreciate you just being a part of this movement and being such a young but spirited voice in this fight. Many of us have been survivors or impacted by gun violence for years now. And so I would love to share with our next speaker, Kristin Rozigno, to tell a little bit more about their story and how gun violence has impacted them since that frightful day in 2012. Kristin.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. It's, I guess a pleasure to meet you all. My name is Kristin Rozigno. I live in Newtown. And I've probably always thought that the country needed to enact more stringent rules about, over these tools that are by definition designed to kill living things. But in 2012, I was living and working in Boston, and on December 14th, I got a phone call from one of my aunts, and she was looking for my mom. And she said, "I'm looking for your mother because your Aunt Jackie says she needs her big sister. There's been a shooting at Daniels Elementary School, and she wants her big sister to go with her." So I had to find my mom, and you all know how the rest of that day played out. My cousin Daniel was one of the 20 first graders who didn't come home that day from his first grade classroom. And so clearly then was the time for action, right? I've been thinking a lot about anniversaries this week with Columbine. I was in high school when that happened, with the Waffle House. There's all these anniversaries right now, right? But the anniversary right now that I've been thinking a lot about was 8 years ago. Last week, Greg, you mentioned, I turned on the TV and saw my family standing in the Rose Garden with then Vice President Biden, responding and reacting to the Senate's failure to pass the most basic, low-level, toothless background check bill. It was devastating, right? And so since then, right, countless families, countless people have lost their loved ones to guns, be it through a mass shooting, suicide, domestic violence, failure to safely store firearms, right? Police, frankly, a sheer overabundance of firearms and a lack of regulation over that. Again, the numbers are the devastating part. So when is the time, right? If Sandy Hook wasn't the time, and I think the answer is now, right? I'll be honest, I just got involved, right? After Sandy Hook, I needed to put myself back together. I went and found a job. I moved back home to Connecticut. I fell in love. I had some babies, and then the pandemic happened, and everything was put on hold to some extent, right? And then the past month or so, it's been news story after news story after news story, and the weather's warming up. We're all coming out again, and all I'm reading about are these shootings, and some kind of critical mass has been hit for me personally. I've told my story, what happened to me, to countless people in person, but I've never done anything like this, because now is the time. And so yeah, I call on the Senate and everyone in this country to honor my cousin Daniel, and to honor all of our loved ones and everyone else, all the victims of gun violence who've been taken from their families by this very basic, low-level failure to pass the most reasonable legislation possible. So now is the time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thank you for being a part of today. These anniversaries are really tough, because I think for so many folks, we think that, okay, gun violence happens, it's on the media, it goes away. But for the folks directly impacted, we think about it every day. We're impacted by it every day. And this is something that's ever present for us. And so we just hope that Congress will at least acknowledge that by taking action and advancing real clear efforts to address this crisis that frankly is impacting millions of Americans every single day. So Kristin, I just thank you for your bravery for sharing this. Very excited to hear about your family and little ones. So
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
but just thank you again for being a part of this. Next, we're going to hear from Carolyn Dixon, who had lost a loved one in New York City in 2014. So Carolyn, love to hear from you next.
First, I want to thank everyone, and thank you so much, Poe. Thank you, Greg, Fred. I love you all. You know, being a Black mother, I desperately urge the leaders to tackle all forms of violence. Not only do I worry about the crimes and the shootings that's happening in our Black and brown communities, I'm also fearful for the 2 sons that I have left with police-involved shootings. I am tired of running to the hospitals and going to funerals and seeing babies in a casket. We just had an 11-month-old baby shot in a car. The time is now to take action, for so many communities are suffering through the trauma of gun violence. So I urge our leaders, the time is now, it's important, it is urgent. So please step up and stop the pain all around in the circle. Much love and blessings to all.
Thank you, Carolyn. And thank you for your leadership too, with where do we go from here? There's so many of us who have frankly turned our pain into purpose and have stepped up and organized and advocated and created organizations to address this crisis. And so thank you, Carolyn, and thank you to everyone on this call who has remained diligent, frankly, in this crisis and fighting on behalf of the communities that they serve or are a part of. Next, we're going to hear from another activist who frankly has been working hard on this issue for years now. Shondell Brooks, also someone who frankly has the most recent anniversary. So Shondell.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for allowing me to tell my story. And I mean, you guys know how it is. On April 22nd, 2018, I've seen gun violence. I grew up in New York. I've seen it in schools, in my neighborhood, and moving to Tennessee, I just thought, I'm moving my kids to a safer place, a better place to raise kids. Never thought that one day I would get that call on April 22nd, 2018, that my life would change forever. My son Akila and my son Abedi was at a Waffle House here in Nashville, having breakfast with their girlfriends when a man that shouldn't have had a gun, had mental issues, and his guns were confiscated and they were given to his dad. The dad gave the guns back to him when he was moving here to Tennessee. He got here and took my son's life, almost took both of their lives. He walked up to the Waffle House and just started shooting and took 4 lives, 4 innocent lives, including my son. My son was a genius at everything that he did. And I'm not just saying that because that's my son, and it's been, as a mom, you shouldn't have to bury your child. It's hard to talk about it over and over. And I've been talking about my son and my story for 3 years now. And within that 3 years, I haven't seen any changes. I have begged and pleaded with the legislators here in Tennessee. They just passed permitless carry, where you can carry a gun without background checks, without training, and you can carry it in public. I testified, I speak out in public, and nothing happened. Now we have a law that puts my life in danger, my children. I walk now more in fear because I don't know when this is going to happen again. I'm asking Congress, I'm asking the senators, not even only here in Tennessee, but on Capitol Hill. The time is now. The time is now for you to make changes. The time is now for you to pass common sense gun laws, laws that are going to protect us. The time for you to ban assault rifles. This is the time, because this man used the gun, used assault rifle to take my son's life. You know, this is, I mean, why do we need assault rifles? Why do we need that? Why do we need that? A weapon of destruction, why do we need that? You know, this is all new to me. It's been 3 years, but it's 3 years of, I've been struggling to be able to tell my story and still fight and still stand up for my son and be his voice. It's the hardest thing a parent should have to do. And today, I just ask for changes. I ask for laws that are going to protect us. The time is now, not tomorrow, not next week, now, like yesterday, now, right now. Protect us, save us, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Shondell. And just thank you for sharing. I mean, I think we just overlook how real it is to have to step up and face your trauma every day, just to be activists for this really important cause. And so many of us wish that we could sit next to members of Congress and share our stories with them directly about how urgent this is. This is not a political priority for us. This is our lives and our future lives and our past lives, unfortunately, for so many. But yet we're still here advocating steadfast in this fight. So thank you, Shondell. I want to next just turn to Arisa Nappa Williams, someone who unfortunately has been in this fight a little bit longer than a lot of us, based on her experience with, and also the founder of Not Another Child. So Arisa. I think you're on mute, Arisa.
No, I'm not. Can you hear me?
We got you now.
Okay. Good morning. I'm just overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed right now. I represent my son, Untitled Chapter, who was murdered August 7th, 2006. And although I represent him, this is not about an isolated incident. This is not about those of us that are on this press conference today. It is about a country that is traumatized and fearful of where they can go, of what they can do. And Senate and everyone, this is about the people that you represent. We're not foreigners. We are the people that put you in office. We are the people that you represent. You know, I used to pray growing up in Brooklyn, in the inner cities, for our youth, because I remember being a youth and sitting on the bench one day after school and hearing gunshots, and you lay flat on the ground like you've been taught, and looking at a friend of mine that was laying beside me to see if she was okay, and seeing the blood pour out of her. But I used to pray for our youth daily, you know, because they're out on the street, just for them to enjoy life. But now everyone is at bay. No one is safe. No one is exempt. We have had shootings at Walmart, at Stop and Shop, at schools, at street corners, at FedEx, at churches. No one is safe. Where do you go? And so now is the time. You know, as I look back over my life, yesterday was the time. You know, yesterday was the time. You know, Lewis referred to mass shootings as being 1% of shootings. We are the other 99%. Do you even hear of the other 99%? Why are you so fearful to look at the statistics of what is truly going on? Our stories are stories, the unheard. It's stories you never hear about. It's stories of Black and brown youth. So the stigma that comes along with that is, you know, how did that happen? Were they in gangs? Were they doing that? No, sometimes that's not the case. And even if that is the case, we are U.S. citizens. And this is something that should be granted to us. Background checks are minimal. That is minimal. Trafficking is a whole nother issue. Because we can't even, in these eastern states, New York and New Jersey, and we can't even go and just purchase guns. And so how it gets to our communities is something totally different. But we'll start at the basic right now. We're just asking you to come a little way to us and just give us background checks. One thing with background checks is you cannot background check a person's integrity because of their integrity. It is still being sold in the black market and trafficked into our communities. So background checks is still just the base. It's still just the minimum. And so once again, Senate, we need you. We are looking for a bipartisan effort, but I pray that if that does not happen, we take whatever extremes necessary to save the lives of not just our babies, not just our black, of every citizen, because once again, no one is exempt and no one is safe. Now is the time, because tomorrow is too late. Thank you, Greg, and everyone that has been a part of this.
Thank you, Arisa. And I couldn't imagine a more powerful way to close out our agenda of folks who are speaking today. So just thank you. Again, I'm at a loss for words, to be honest, because as Arisa said, we've been waiting for action, and we've been advocating, we've been fighting. So many folks in our communities have been organizing, have been working with the survivors who have been impacted, that have been intervening conflicts in our own communities. And while the community is putting in everything we can to save lives, and our people are fighting every day to save lives, for whatever reason, Congress and our government, which their sole number one job is to keep us safe, has not been stepping up to take action, right? We know when we look at how our country moves around foreign affairs, around any other crisis in America, they take action swiftly. But when it's communities like ours that are impacted and have been devastated for now decades, we have seen our government fail, frankly fail, to take action. I always remind folks, every year over 100,000 people are joined into this movement of survivors because of loss, because of trauma, because of tragedy. And that is a lifelong impact on them and their families, their neighbors, their communities, and their friends. But yet Congress has refused to take action. So we are here, we're looking to the Senate to step up on background checks, to step up on gun safety measures, but also to step up on investing in the individuals and the organizations that are out here fighting every day to save lives. The president has already stated through his executive action that he wants to address trafficking, he wants to address assault weapons, he wants to address background checks, and he also wants to address the inequities that lead to violence in so many of our communities through financial commitment, but also policy change. But yet we've seen silence from the Senate, and we know we need more from Congress. So we hope that you'll hear this message, that you'll step up and take action, if not for us, for those who have been lost in the past, and unfortunately, if we don't take action, for those who may be lost in the future. The time is now. We thank you again, everyone who participated in this. I know this took a lot of courage. I pray that, you know, you find your own peace in this day, but also that Congress finds peace in taking action and stepping up in this moment. All right, have a blessed day, everybody.